Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled board meeting for Monday, January 22nd. We welcome all those that are here in attendance this evening. We also welcome those that are watching on GMTV at home. Just a few highlights and housekeeping about this evening's meeting. This evening we do have 3 special recognition items on the agenda this evening. We also have citizens to be heard. If you'd like to speak to the board, we have sheets to be filled out in Peoples Street, and if you bring those forward to our clerk, she will get those up here to the dais, and we'll make sure you're recognized as item 8. We also have an amendment to a resolution on the agenda tonight, and we will also meet as a beer board as well. This evening, Public Works Director Bo Mills will lead us in the invocation, and Alderman John Barzizza will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the beauty of this day. We thank you for your glory that we felt in the warm sunshine today, and we thank you for that. Just grateful to have our police chief back with us, and thank you for your healing power with him. Just, Lord, as all these have gathered together tonight, Lord, to be a part of this meeting, we just thank you for each one. We thank you for their interest in our city and for their passion for our city. We just ask for your wisdom to be with these elected officials tonight, Lord, as they deliberate these items before them. Be with staff, Lord, as they make their presentations. And just be careful, Lord, that all that's said and done here tonight would glorify you. We pray these things in your precious name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, approval of the agenda. The board meets in executive session prior to the board meeting at 5:30. At that time, there are no items moved to consent or removed from consent or any other items brought forward. Are there any items at this time? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as published and presented to the public?
Move to approve.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
The agenda has been set for this evening. Item 5 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting held on January the 8th of this year. There were no modifications or adjustments or corrections during executive session. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as published?
Move to approve.
Second. It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Minutes are approved. Brings us to item 6 on the agenda, special recognition for the evening. First 2 special recognition items are both related to education. Vice Mayor Gibson will lead us in agenda item A and B. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask members of our Education Commission to come forward. Chairman Mindy Fisher, Terry Harris, Barb Boyer, Steve Chandler, Sean Lane, Manjeet Kaur. We've got a full house tonight. And if I could ask for our Teacher of the Month, Melinda Henson, to come forward now. It is an honor for the Germantown Education Commission to present the January 2018 Teacher of the Month Award to Ms. Melinda Henson. Ms. Henson is a 5th grade math teacher at Dogwood Elementary School, where she pushes her students to think through the logic of solving math problems. Focusing on teamwork, she leads her students in discussions of the strategies needed to work through challenging math problems that are now such a critical part of the curriculum. Additionally, she serves as Dogwood's math coach and helps other math teachers improve their instructional design. She stepped into other classrooms when teachers were absent to make sure those students received consistent math instruction during their teachers' absences. She even helped organize Dogwood's recent math night for parents and teachers to to discuss the new math curriculum and the teaching methods Dogwood teachers are using to implement that curriculum. Ms. Henson, please accept our appreciation for your commitment to Germantown students and to excellence every day. Your award is sponsored by Principal Toyota. Thank you. And while Sneha Sharma comes forward, Sneha? So if Ms. Sharma is not here, I'm going to go ahead and read the exemplary things that were said in her application. The January 2018 Youth Excellence Award is presented to Sneha Sharma, a senior at St. Mary's Episcopal School. Sneha was described to the Commission as an amazingly bright, focused student with diverse interests and incredible drive and energy. She's the real deal. It is clear that she dives into whatever makes her curious, finishes what she begins, and stays committed to her goals. These traits are evident by her work the past several summers in the University of Memphis Behavioral Neuroscience Lab, where she helped run the day-to-day operations of the lab, and contributed to the research efforts going on there to understand the neural basis for risk-taking behaviors. Additionally, she's been enrolled in summer college courses at Duke University in diverse areas such as world religions and the Harlem Renaissance. Outside of the classroom, she currently serves as the chairman of the Memphis Youth Council and participates in Model UN competitions, Girls State, and student government. Sneha was described as being passionate about democracy and fairness for all people. In her extracurricular activities, she has flourished as a leader among her peers and is quickly becoming a voice for student engagement and social action in her community. In recognition of her commitment to leadership, academic curiosity, and service to her community, the Germantown Education Commission is proud to present Sneha Sharma with the January 2018 Germantown Youth Excellence Award. Your award is generously sponsored by Principal Toyota. Welcome.
To both recipients this evening, you have our congratulations from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and also the pride in the honor of being recognized as well. Congratulations to both. That brings us to item 6C on the agenda, Vesta Home Show. Mr. Lawton.
Mayor and members of the board, recently the Vesta Home Show completed its activities with a very successful show. The Germantown Education Foundation was named as the charity of choice for this event, and if the board can look at their agenda item, you'll see how much money was raised through that event. And with each ticket sold, the Germantown Education Foundation, as the charity of choice, received $1 for each ticket sold, which amounted to $16,268. So a very successful event and a great fundraiser for the Germantown Education Foundation being named as a charity of choice. The Education Foundation also received a donation from Invisible Fence of Memphis in the amount of $2,406.57, all of which will go to the Germantown Education to support the good work that they're doing. Very successful event, and congratulations to everyone.
I know that Stephanie Brockway, the Executive Director and CEO of the Germantown Education Foundation, is here. Would you like to come forward and recognize some of your partners in this event?
Good evening. We just want to thank the Home Builders Association. We also want to thank Vesta. It was an incredible event. There are many of you here that have actually volunteered over that 3.5-week period, and we just appreciate everyone. The community support was incredible, and we just thank everybody. And I know that Don, Mr. Glaze, has something to say.
Please come forward. Don Glaze, the Executive Director of the West Tennessee Home Builders Association.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to Stephanie and Chief. Did an amazing job in coordinating literally hundreds of volunteers, one of which was Colorado, who we saw there pretty much every Saturday and Sunday. So we want to thank you. We're very proud to have partnered with you. It was a successful show, primarily because of your involvement. So we appreciate you. We appreciate the city and the cooperation that we received from the city, and we'd sure like to come back if we could.
We'd love to have you. You've had Vesta Home Shows here before over the years. I know that for certain.
We're working on a couple for the future.
Well, we would love to. You have a big check, and I will take an opportunity to come down and have a picture of the big check. On any of those three recognition items, it does not require any board action, so those are just for the sake of the community. That takes us to item 7 on the agenda. Before we get to that, I would like to recognize we have some folks in attendance, some of our employees, our team members, that are in the Play Like a Champion class, and that is an annual class that city employees go through, where they do rotations through various departments, and they get to understand in totality what the city does that may not touch their department, but ultimately bring services to the community. If you guys could stand up in the back, we'll recognize you real quick. Play like a champion. Thank you. That brings us to Alderman liaison reports. We move from position 1 to 5. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. Senior Commission met last week on January the 18th. We discussed the spring seminar, which will be held on April the 20th from 9:30 in the morning till 11:30. The actual seminar or the speaker will start at 10 o'clock, followed by lunch. This year, the seminar will be in regards to Alzheimer's and dementia. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Education Commission, many of whom were in attendance tonight because they were attending a subcommittee for the Battle of the Brains competition, which is a STEM competition that will be held at Houston High School on February 10th. We have currently 8 teams consisting of area high schools that will be coming for that science, technology, engineering, and math competition. The community is welcome to come and observe the best and brightest. The Neighborhood Commission is planning for the remodeled homes and landscape tour, which will be April 22nd. We are in the process of finalizing those addresses, and exciting things will be coming forward in that in the next few weeks. Beautification met on January 8th to begin their work for the 2018 calendar year. They reviewed the 2017 annual report, set the schedule for the Beautification Business Awards program, and worked on event plans for Arbor Day, which will be held on Friday, March 2nd. And we welcome new members, Beth Ulicki, Stacy Johnson, and Huzefa Mamula. Library Board will be meeting tomorrow at 5, as well as Education Commission at 5:30. That's my report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
Mayor, I did not have any meetings.
Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. The DRC, the Design Review Commission, and the Parks Commission held their first meetings of the year this week, and so I have no report as well.
Alderman Yonda.
Same here. No report. Same here. No report. We got shut down on the FAC, Financial Advisory Commission, due to the Snow and Ice Festival we had last week, and we will meet tomorrow, get going on the budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And quickly from the Mayor's office, just a couple of quick announcements. I just wanted to make the community aware that we took delivery of our 6th ambulance, so I want to throw a shout out to Germantown Fire Department. I think that ambulance is equipped with a power load stretcher that will help reduce back injuries and give better service to ultimately the patients that are in the ambulance. And so, very successful program. We've got 6 in total now. In addition, I would like to thank Pam Beasley, our Parks Director, and our Historic Commission Chairperson, Jackie Cliff, for making a trip to Nashville to petition that Oak Lawn Gardens be included in the National Registry of Historic Places. And then finally, a quick shout out to all the different departments involved in keeping our streets clean and passable during the 2 different ice storms. That's Public Works, Fire, Police. Police had to direct traffic on a couple of occasions due to some lights being out. General Services, everyone on the team really made sure that the streets were clean, safe, and the community operated well. So thank you to all. Brings us to item number 8 on the agenda, citizens to be heard.
Mayor, may I interrupt just 1 minute
Sure.
for a housekeeping matter? Mayor, I think it'd be appropriate if there are any parties in the room tonight that are involved in the beer board proceedings, and that would be representatives of Circle K, Germantown Shell, or Shell Food Mart. If they're present, if they would speak to Mr. McDaniel out in the lobby, I think that would be useful.
Again, just to repeat from our city attorney, if any of those 3 particular business owners are here, if they would go into People Street and get with our city prosecutor, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you.
Again, that brings us to item 8 on the agenda, citizens to be heard. If you did not get an opportunity to fill out a sheet, you can still do so at this time. You make sure you fill it out completely and hand it to our clerk. Some of the guidelines to citizens to be heard, that the folks that filled out a sheet did read these instructions and signed that they committed to uphold the guidelines. The Board of Merit Aldermen welcomes comments from citizens and offers the agenda item known as citizens to be heard at each meeting. To participate, please provide the information requested below on the sheet and turn it into the clerk. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses from the Board of Merit Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments should be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers must clearly state their name, home address, organization they're representing, if any, and the subject of their presentation. Speakers may offer objective comments. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. The presiding board chair shall have sole authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to the board rules. The undersigned attests to fully reading all rules contained on the statement and adheres to comply with stated rules and procedures. Lack of full completion of this form will lead to disqualification from speaking. Our first speaker this evening will be, just come to the podium. Once you state your name, you'll have 3 minutes to speak to the board and to the public. Zoe Fleming.
Good evening. My name is Zoe Olivia Fleming. That's Zoeolivia Fleming with 1 M. I live at 9645 Morning Dove Cove in Germantown. My husband Calvin and I are here tonight. I represent him. I'm the wife. Of course I do. I am here to speak on the development and the moratorium. First of all, we moved here from New Orleans 3 years ago. I love this city. I love it passionately. We moved here, we considered other places, but we looked at it, and we looked at the numerous awards bestowed upon this city over the last several years, which were for its innate character and its charm. I'm not going to address other issues that were raised previously by voters and citizens regarding apartments and developments, except to say I truly believe anything less than a full permanent moratorium covering the entire city is insufficient. I have heard the statements that the development is the equivalent of or comparable to the Oklahoma land rush and the California gold rush. I have a bachelor's of arts in history, although for the last 38 years, and don't hold this against me, I did divorce work in Louisiana. I did not do history, which I love. Divorce work I do not so much love. But I did research on these 2 issues. The Oklahoma land rush came about in 1889. The government dispossessed the prior residents. It was then thrown open to those who wished to rush in and claim it. It did create enormous growth in an exceptionally short period. I do not wish this for this city. The California gold rush occurred in 1848 when gold had been found at Sutter's Mill. It created an enormous rush of people into the area. It had severe negative effects upon those who had lived there before that time. The only people who profited, except for a handful of people who found gold, were businesses. And what businesses profited? Well, at the time it was restaurants to feed, overnight laundries for cleaning, quick establishments which charged top dollar for places for people to lay their head at night, and what is best known colloquially as places that provided, quote, entertainment for the gents. The ladies were brought in. I do not wish that for this city. Further, if we wished to move to reside in Oklahoma or California, well, we would have moved there. We're both lawyers. We chose this city for the same reason other residents have chosen it. It's known as and takes pride in being a residential bedroom community. I think the fact that the citizens appeared last time at a standing room only overflow crowd says a great deal about this issue. I would have been here, but my daughter had a baby in California, and I could not. I believe this present moratorium is insufficient, and I'm going to point this out, and I feel very strongly about it. I'm going to point to one last historical event. In 2016, it was called Drain the Swamp.
15 seconds, ma'am.
And voters are energized and acted. They were energized and acted then, and they'll be energized and acted in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Sarah Wilkerson Freeman.
Sarah Freeman, can you hear me all right? 7684 Appahan Lane, Germantown 38138. I've watched the process called Smart Growth since 2007 and have been especially appalled at how step by step, with great deliberation, the city administration has undercut the oversight processes so that the residents of Germantown are consistently and constantly at the mercy of huge developers who are aided and abetted by certain elected officials, the city administrator, city attorneys,
Mrs. Freeman,
and city...
you are out of order. That is,
Oh, I am?
That is hearsay. Now, over the years, you have done a very good job of communicating with the board.
Aided and...
Please,
Can I show you what I have?
Please continue your
Okay.
comments without citing innuendo or hearsay. Continue, please.
I'll try to, because I was very careful. Please don't count that on my minutes. Who have assisted by certain elected officials, etc. I'm especially struck by the creativity of the attorneys, depending on what helps the developers. For example, in 2013, the oversight procedures for smart growth developments were trimmed by 3 months by the coordinated effort of the head of economic development, the city attorney, the chief planner. It was amazing watching the mental gymnastics used to ensure that a zoned preservation area would be clear-cut. Preserve existing trees, the ordinance said, but this was reinterpreted rather cleverly by the attorney to say what tree really only exists if it's 10 inches in diameter. Brilliant. Down go the trees, up goes Thornwood, no green buffer along Germantown Road as zoned and promised. The developer indicated that he did not want it. The attorney came up with a redefinition of existence. Very clever. Likewise, when it was discovered that critical oversight votes were not being taken, illegally ignored in fact, in 2014, the attorney came up with another brilliant answer. Have the Planning Commission and Board of Mayor and Aldermen pass a resolution that stated that everything the Planning Commission did illegally in 2014, ergo declared legal. February 2015, look it up. It seems that since the inception of smart growth, the taxpayers of Germantown have paid bundles for clever legal stratagems that always, check me please, favor the developers and always leave citizen taxpayers stupefied and at a loss as to how it is that the people most affected by these huge developments are instead misled by officials who, according to the charter, have pledged to protect the safety and public welfare of the citizens. The crowd down here 2 weeks ago tried to get that message across.
15
the
seconds.
bottom line is that the city of Germantown has been hijacked by the developers and those who make large fortunes off of serving them. The imbalance of power is crystal clear. It is time to push back against the attorneys, especially when they deliver opinions.
Your time is concluded.
That say any developer can do anything, pretty much.
Thank you.
The mayor has the contracting authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki O'Brien. folks, just a quick announcement. No applause during citizens to be heard or during debate or discussion. I may become unpopular, but I will clear the chambers. Thank you.
My name is Vicki O'Brien. I live at 7253 Creekwood Cove, 38138, Germantown. I'm here today to ask the mayor and aldermen to please quit approving apartment complexes. On behalf of the nearly 3,000 residents who signed a Change.org petition posted a week from Saturday, this is not a good path for Germantown, in my opinion. Our schools are packed beyond capacity, and these apartments will be a magnet for families wanting into Germantown Municipal School District without having to buy property. Instead of apartments, why not low-maintenance, zero-lot lines for our seniors and our empty nesters? These will make many single-family houses available for the young people trying to move into Germantown, and which they're buying at a rapid pace. I mean, all you have to do is put them up for sale and they're gone. I am also very concerned about apartments being at every gateway into the entrances of Germantown. Example, Forest Hill Irene and Winchester. Germantown Road in Winchester, there's talk of apartments going in there. Poplar West, and of course North Germantown Road, Thornwood. I beg you to quit approving via smart growth, which is an easier path of approval. It pretty much just demolishes all of our zoning and the approval process that we have in place for apartments in the past. This is just a new way to get things approved, and it's not to the benefit of Germantown, in my opinion. Vote no to smart growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Jason Sharp, please.
Jason Sharp, 7214 Creekwood Cove, Germantown. I just wanted to take a few minutes also to talk about smart growth and the fact of the travesty at the Western Gateway that we have, our cell phone mattress store that we have sitting in the right lane of Poplar Avenue. And it's just time to put on the brakes. The moratorium looked like it was going to be that. Maybe it's an election year ploy, maybe it's actually intended to go deeper, but it feels like in looking at and seeing that we're not willing to actually stop. It's just we're just kind of looking at how can we convince the residents that this is good development. When we're looking at it, we're seeing it with our eyes, we're trying to find ways to talk about it. And you guys have a T4 overlay or your T5 overlay. When you put these on, it makes for a different path to get to where your development gets through, to where you can have different parts approved, and it takes away from residents. So nobody's going to want to build a resident there, to build a neighborhood. They're going to build the most they can get out of it, which is a large urban development, which is not what the residents are looking for in Germantown. So we encourage you guys to look at the moratorium, to find out ways that we can actually strengthen this and actually make it meaningful for the residents, and not just something that's a piece of paper where we can say, well, we look, and here's how we're going to prove to you guys that this is good, that we have all these developers coming in from out of town. So, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Herschel Freeman. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Lou Wardlow, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening. Lou Wardlaw with the Martin Tate, Morrow & Marston Law Firm, 6410 Poplar Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee. I represent one of your corporate citizens, Watermark at Forest Hill, and its developers, and I have with me Ms. Jessica Tuttle here on behalf of the development team. My clients oppose the proposed motion to amend the resolution number 18R03. As this body knows, on November 7, 2017, the City of Germantown Planning Commission approved an amended outline plan along with the final site plan for Watermark at Forest Hill Heights. That's been approved. This Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved the Watermark development on December 11, 2017. My clients are here before you today, and I've submitted a letter for the record and given to you members of the board and you, Mr. Mayor, any attempt to strip the Watermark development of its now vested property rights or delay the realization of these rights. Specifically, it's our position that Germantown cannot now change, alter, impair, prevent, diminish, or otherwise delay the development of the property as it has been previously approved. We ask that you please note our objection on the record. Ms. Tuttle is here to answer any questions about the development that you may have, either now or in your voting later tonight, including questions about what the development is, or the $2 million or more that's being dedicated by way of improvements by Watermark to help benefit the city of Germantown. She's here to address any of that. I, too, can address any questions, and we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Board.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Woods Weathersby. Please come forward and state your name, address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Woods Weathersby, and I live at 427 Williamsburg in Memphis. And I'm an attorney also, and I'm here on behalf of Boyle Investment Company. I haven't met all of the mayor and aldermen, but I do know Mr. Lawton and Mr. Harris. The last time I was here on behalf of Boyle Investment Company, it was to make a gift, a donation of Wolf River Trails. And Boyle has been a very good citizen of this community for many, many, many years. I've been with them for 39 years. And so here today, Boyle has now made a new investment, and they believe that they've done everything right. They, in November of last year, bought property out on Winchester in compliance with the adoption of the Forest Hill Small Area Plan and based on the urban zoning, and the site has been approved. They bought it in reliance on the city of Germantown, allowing them to build multifamily apartments. And we would ask, we're disturbed now, and so we would ask that that the town, that the city, continue to allow them to do so. And so we are here tonight objecting to 18R03 as well, because we think that our site, based primarily on the confirmation through the zoning verification letter that we got as recently as last November, that it should be approved. So we're here as good citizens, having done it right, relied on you. We feel we're vested with the rights to this property, and if we're denied it or it comes against us, that it's a taking, basically, from the property and the land that we just bought and made a good investment in this community. So I would ask that that the resolution not be adopted and that we be allowed to continue with our project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Philip Connor is the next speaker. Please come forward, state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Phil Connor, 3664 Crestwind Drive, Germantown. Mayor Palazzolo, Vice Mayor Gibson, Aldermen. Tonight I'm going to read a statement. I generally speak extemporaneously, but I have a statement to read tonight. And the good news for everyone here is it will be less than 3 minutes. On January 11, 2018, I gave notice of my appeal of the zoning change in the Forest Hill Heights Crestwind Hill area. The change is from commercial to high density and multifamily. This change has been approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Aldermen on a 3-2 vote. As part of the process, we have now entered the appeal phase, which must be satisfied before the zoning change can be final. A petition against multifamily projects in Germantown now lists the names of almost 3,000 residents from all over Germantown. Online polls now show that 94% of Germantown respondents oppose any more apartments in Germantown. Only 3% approve and 3% are unsure. Another poll shows that almost 98% are against developments of apartments anywhere in Germantown. This illustrates that all of Germantown is our backyard. What is bad for part of our city is bad for all of our city. We must protect our city from developers that are only interested in putting money in their pockets without regard to the cost to the city's taxpayers. Case in point, increasing overstress on our school system, which will already be overtaxed by the time the new school opens. The temporary moratorium adopted January the 8th expresses these concerns about the effects on our city, but does little to abate them. A proposed amendment tonight will eliminate the many loopholes present in the current moratorium and turn it into something that is real and not an illusion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hold on now, folks. We've got a couple more speakers. Morris Fisher, please come forward. State your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Morris Fisher. Live at 2271 Riverdale, Germantown 38138. Speaking as a concerned citizen. Good evening. I have nothing against apartments or people who live in them. I have lived in them myself and enjoyed it, but then there is a proper time and place for apartments. Right now is not the time, and Germantown is not the place for more apartments. Just last year, we citizens fought hard to get a new elementary school built to alleviate overcrowding. Now it seems that the city boards have voted to at least begin the approval of 3 large apartment complexes in the Forest Hill Heights area. If built, would contribute to overcrowding situation at the new school in a few years. Winchester, Forest Hill area does not need more apartments. Within 2 or 3 miles of any way you go from that area, there are countless huge apartment complexes going toward Collierville, going back toward Memphis, and you go down to 385 at Forest Hill. Forest Hill, that's the granddaddy of all of them. They've got them on both sides of the road. It just, the skyline is just covered up with them. So I don't understand why you would want to build more huge complexes right in an area that's already saturated. We citizens of Germantown vote for aldermen and mayor to represent us and to carry out our wishes. From the surveys, polls, etc. I have seen, it appears that these citizens do not want more apartments. But yet, the majority of the board of aldermen have voted to begin the approval of 3 large apartment complexes in Forest Hill Heights area. I am perplexed, very disappointed, and concerned that the wishes of the people are not being carried out by the majority of the aldermen. I strongly suggest that this board votes to carry out wishes of the majority of the citizens and place a moratorium on all new apartment complexes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Woody Welch, please come forward. Mr. Welch, when you come forward, if you can state your name, address, and zip code for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak to the board.
My name is Woody Welch, 3216 Hollow Creek, Germantown, 38138. Recently, I guess the Alderman group and the mayor has made a decision on the land between Cordova and Germantown Road to make that strictly residential. About 6-7 years ago, I visited with Andy Pouncey, I believe that's his name, in regards to that land. Andy outlined to me that the city of Germantown wanted to turn that into a retail center on the bottom and condos on the top, and even shown me a picture of that property. Since then, I've invested heavily into that property, knowing that sooner or later it would be zoned commercial property. If you look at it from that, that property all the way to 240 is commercial property on both sides of Germantown Road. First of all, Germantown really doesn't have a business district. It's all retail. And it looked like to me that would be an ideal location for a business district in the city of Germantown. Law offices, doctors, lawyers, so forth. And I'm very disappointed that the landowners of that property were not notified of this meeting that y'all were going to discuss this property and make a decision without the landowners being here. That's my word, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. We appreciate all the citizens that came forward this evening to speak to the board. That concludes citizens to be heard for this evening. We now move to the consent agenda, which is item 9 on the agenda. I'll go through the consent agenda and read that into the record this evening. Item 9A, appointment to Beautification Commission. Item 9B, appointment to the Great Hall Conference Center Advisory Commission. Item 9C, appointment to the Personnel Advisory Commission. Item 9D, appointment to the Retirement Plan Administrator Commission and other Post-Employment Benefits Commission. Item 9E, change order number 1, Howard Road Culvert Replacement Project closeout. Item 9F, donation Germantown Community Library. 9G, donation Germantown Education Commission. 9H, donation Germantown Education Foundation, Fill the Fountain. Item I, donation Police Department. Item from the Kramers. Item J, donation from the police to the Police Department from the Warrens. Item K, Germantown Athletic Club, Club Management Software Contract Extension. Item L, purchase decorative street sign post. Are there any items that the board would like to be pulled for presentation? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published to the public?
Move to approve.
Motion?
Second.
It's a motion and a second by Alderman Owens. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Consent agenda does carry. We move to item agenda number 10 on the agenda this evening. Project Development Contract number 1221, Germantown Presbyterian Church, Phase 2.
Mayor, if I could interrupt, please.
Yes.
I attend church at Germantown Presbyterian, so I'll be abstaining from this item and stepping down from the dais.
Well, let the record state that Alderman Owens is abstaining and has left the dais. Mr. Ross, presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Purpose of this agenda item is to approve the development contract 1221 for Germantown Presbyterian Church Phase 2. This portion of the project includes the construction of the education wing, the fellowship hall, and other minor additions to the existing chapel. This church, as you know, is located in the old Germantown zoning district. The Design Review Commission originally approved a master plan for this project in 2008. In July of 2008, this board approved development contract 1171, under which a portion of the project was completed by the church. Due to the time lapse between the previous contract approval and now, a phasing plan for this project was administratively approved on September 19th in order to separate the project into 2 phases, September 19th, 2017, in order to separate this project into 2 phases to complete the remaining work. The development contract in front of you this evening is to complete the remaining work from that approval back in 2008. If you have any other questions, we are available for answers, and this does fulfill Germantown Forward 2030 strategic objective of policies encouraging investment in key commercial areas and development practices supporting economic sustainability.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve Project Development Contract 1221 for Germantown Presbyterian Church, Phase 2?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Motion carries. Brings us to item number 11 on the agenda, right-of-way acquisition, Track 14, RB Germantown LLC, Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard, Intersection Improvement Project, and Resolution 18R04. Mr. Gwaltney.
Thank you, Mayor.
The purpose of this agenda item is to consider approval of Resolution 18R04, which authorizes the City of Germantown and the State of Tennessee to acquire from RB Germantown LLC and any lien holders the property and interests as described in Attachment 3 to your agenda packet. Attachment 3 is a plat and legal description of the areas in question. This acquisition of real estate and easements related to the Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard intersection improvements project will be by the exercise of eminent domain vested in the city and the state for the purchase amount of $430,932 or other such amount as may be found by the courts to be due the owner. The property is owned by RB Germantown LLC. Morgan Stanley Mortgage Capital Holdings LLC is the holder of a deed of trust which has been assigned to the U.S. Bank National Association as trustee of Morgan Stanley Capital One Incorporated. Track 14 is at the northwest corner of Wolf River Boulevard and Germantown Road. It is the Walgreens site. This tract is one of 26 that the city is in the process of acquiring in order to improve the safety and efficiency of the intersection. The city's appraiser and reviewer determined that the fair market value of this particular tract to be $430,932. This price includes the right-of-way acquisition, the necessary slope and temporary construction easements, as well as the damages to the remainder of the property. TDOT reviewed and approved the appraisal and then gave the city the go-ahead to make the offer in that amount to the property owner. The city's negotiator, Mr. Andy Miller, who's in attendance tonight, made initial contact with the property owners in June of 2017. Numerous phone calls, voicemail messages, and emails between Mr. Miller and several property owner contacts over the ensuing 5 months yielded virtually no progress on the negotiations. Attachments 1 and 2 to your agenda packet summarizes all of those contacts from the negotiator. The last contact with the owner's reps was on November 20th of 2017, at which time Mr. Miller turned in the file to the city to proceed with condemnation proceedings. Staff is in full support of this recommendation, and we respectfully request BMA approval of Resolution 18R04 to proceed with condemnation proceedings on Track 14.
Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 18R04 authorizing the City of Germantown and the State of Tennessee to acquire by eminent domain from RB Germantown LLC and any lien holders the property described in Attachment 3, identified as Track 14, for the total lump sum amount of $430,932.00, or such other amounts as found to be due by the courts to the owner for improvements to the Germantown Road, Wolf River intersection, authorizing the city attorney and the attorney general to proceed with condemnation proceedings, and authorizing the city to pay said sums to courts as may be required. Is there a motion? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Yes, Vice Mayor?
Just a comment, in looking over the packet, I noted over 20 times where an attempt was made to contact the various owner representatives. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes, and when was that first contact? And if there was some contacts, someone did speak to a person at the first contact, correct?
That is correct. First contact was in June of 17.
Okay, and what was said at that point in time?
I may have to call Mr. Miller up to, I have not had personal contact with any of the property owners. It's all been through the negotiator.
Okay, could we have him come up?
Please come forward, Mr. Miller. You can stay, you can get at the middle podium if you like.
The owner of the business is out of town. They're in Deerfield, Illinois. The owner was contacted actually by certified mail, which I have the receipt where they received it. I got no response from them. On July the 5th, I contacted the legal counsel for Walgreens. I got no response from them. I've made 25 different attempts to either contact either Mr. Steiner or the representative of the owner, and we have had very little response to emails, voicemails, and letters.
I have another question. Sure. This is for Mr. Harris. Yes, sir. Mr. Harris, have you seen situations like this in your time as an attorney?
Well, in this, have I been involved in condemnation
Yes,
cases?
sir,
Yeah. No, those are not matters that I handle personally. This particular matter is being handled by the State Attorney General's office. There's an Assistant Attorney General, Mr. Boyd, who is in Jackson, and he handles condemnations across this district, I believe, Mr. Miller. And so this is not the actual suit to enforce the condemnation or the eminent domain will be instituted by the state of Tennessee along with the city of Germantown, and they take the lead role. There are other lawyers in our firm who have handled condemnation cases for the city of Germantown, such as Wolf River,
So
Boulevard.
this does happen?
Oh, yeah, and in fact, you might not have been on board, but that has in fact happened in Germantown with regard to Wolf River Boulevard. And what happens is a complaint is filed and the defendant is served with process so that they have notice, and then there is a hearing within a short period of time during which the court determines whether to grant possession of the land to the city, and that is routine.
Would you
thereafter, the question about compensation for the value of the land is ultimately determined by the court.
Would you find it highly unusual for them not to respond whatsoever?
You know, Mr. Miller's been doing this how many years?
I worked with the state for 45 years as head of their right-of-way office. This is not out of the question as unusual, especially for out-of-town ownerships. The in-town ownerships, they just flat out just say, I'm against the project, and I have no further comments on it. And so we go through the same process.
Your clarification expertise answers my questions. Thank you.
And Alderman, I might point out too, this is really not Walgreens. The owner of this property is this RB Germantown LLC. Walgreens is the tenant.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Alderman Yonda.
I have a question for Mr. Miller. In our book, all these notifications, this is your signature on each one of them?
I have
the majority of them? I mean, it looks like
initialed them.
Your initial? Okay. That's your initials?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just clarifying that you're the one that did all the calling here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for staff?
Attorney Harris, I do have one quick question. Sure. Do we know who the members are of the LLC? Because that's been an issue that I've had on some of these right-of-way acquisitions, is that we don't actually know who the owners are of these corporations.
Well, again, I might call upon Mr. Miller, but I would point out what information we do have, which is that RB Germantown LLC has an office in Deerfield, Illinois. The representative that was identified is Mr. Richard Steiner. There was another representative identified by him, a Mike Sullivan of Range West Consultants, which also is not a resident of Shelby County.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we knew the ownership. I'll take that as a no.
Well, there's other than what's shown on the title records, which I believe is what Mr. Miller works off of, that's all we have.
Thank you.
I'll just say that on the form that we've been getting the property owners to fill out, when they agree to the offer, they fill out all the paperwork, that form being one of them. In this particular case, we don't have it. They haven't agreed, and we don't have it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? It's been motioned and properly seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza.
Pass for the moment.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
I want to say before that a lot of what Walgreens does is they have a lot of secondary LLCs, or companies doing business as, and they're owned by Walgreens. That's a pretty safe assumption because I've had business dealings with them in the past, and it seems to me that's their method of operation.
My knowledge about it is that Walgreens often leases their locations from developers, and that, I believe Mr. Miller can confirm, is the case here.
In this case, it is. Because I know in some other cases that they have a arm's length agreement with another party, and they lease.
Well, again, let's ask Mr. Miller, but my understanding, are you still with us? Where are you?
In this particular situation, that Walgreens is the leasee of the property. I just so happened to be working on another project for the city of Memphis and have ran into this very similar situation.
With them?
With a Walgreens store, but a different ownership. And they own very few of their sites, apparently from...
And Mr.
The legal office that I contacted was Rich Steiner, and I got no positive response from Mr. Steiner.
Mr. Miller, can you, if I could ask a question, is the lease to Walgreens of record in the title work that you reviewed?
I couldn't tell you offhand.
Okay. Just curious.
We currently have the call for a vote. Did you want to vote?
I vote no.
Could you speak up?
I vote no.
Thank you. The item passes. We move to item 12 on the agenda, right-of-way acquisition, track 17, Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard, intersection improvement project, and resolution number 18R05. Mr. Gwaltney.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider approval of Resolution 18R05, which authorizes the City of Germantown and the State of Tennessee to acquire from AmSouth Bank, doing business as Regions Bank, the property and interests as described in Attachment 2. Attachment 2 is in your agenda packet and is the plat and legal description of the easements necessary for the road improvement. This acquisition of easements related to the Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard intersection improvements project will be by the exercise of eminent domain vested in the city and state for the purchase amount of $28,150 or such other amount as may be found by the courts to be due the owner. Track 17 is the site of Regions Bank building on the east side of Germantown Road, north of Wolf River Boulevard, just north of the Exxon gas station. The necessary right-of-way for Germantown Road improvements was dedicated with the recording of the plat for the Regions Bank site. Therefore, right-of-way acquisition is not necessary for this tract. What is necessary for road construction along this tract are slope and temporary construction easements, as described in that Attachment 2 that I mentioned earlier. The city's appraiser and reviewer determined the fair market value for the necessary easements to be $28,150. TDOT reviewed and approved the appraisal, then gave the city the go-ahead to make the offers in that amount to the owners. The offer was made to AmSouth, doing business as Regions, in early May of 2017, and they accepted the offer by signature of the seller's acknowledgement, which is attachment number 1 in your agenda packet. The BMA approved the acquisition of the easements at their July 10th, 2017 meeting. After the offer was accepted, the attorney for AmSouth DBA Regions attempted to make changes to TDOT's standard closing documents. Numerous discussions were held between Regions attorney, the city's closing attorney, Mr. Bill Moss, and the state from August through October in an attempt to close on the tract. Those discussions failed as TDOT is unwilling to make the changes that the attorney for Regions Bank wanted to make. On November 30th, 2017, the state's Attorney General instructed Mr. Moss to proceed with condemnation proceedings. Attachment 3 in your packet summarizes those contacts that were made with the property owners. With approval, we will be canceling the previous check in the amount of $28,150 to AmSouth Bank and replacing it with a check in that amount made out to Shelby County Circuit Court. Staff is in full support, and we respectfully request BMA approval of Resolution 18R05 to proceed with condemnation proceedings on Track 17.
Thank you, Mr. Gwaltney. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 18R05 authorizing the City of Germantown and the State of Tennessee to acquire by eminent domain from AmSouth Bank, DBA, Regions Bank, the property described in Attachment 2, further identified as Track 17, for the total lump sum amount of $28,150 or such other amounts as found to be due by the courts to the owner for improvements to the Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard intersection, authorizing the city attorney and the attorney general to proceed with condemnation proceedings, and authorizing the city to pay said sums to the courts as may be required. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Barzis.
In this particular case, they just refused based on what language in the contract? Do you happen to know?
Well, Mr. Gwaltney has the red line version, and if you would, he could show you the number of changes that counsel for the bank requested. Again, this was a conversation between the State Attorney General's office and the lawyer for the bank in Birmingham. Yeah. But you could clearly see, even from where you are, the number of red line changes. That
it's basically a complete rewrite of the acquisition documents. The standard TDOT closing documents are the same for all property owners. This is the first revision request we saw, and again, it's not just a matter of changing a couple of words here and there. It was a complete rewrite.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for staff? It's been properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Motion carries. Administration is very appreciative of the board's support to move this important project forward to improve traffic mitigation at that intersection. Brings us to item 13 on the agenda, amendment to resolution number 18R03. Mr. Lawton.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Massey requested that this amendment to the resolution that was adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen 2 weeks ago at the January 8th meeting be brought back to the board for consideration, and I will turn it over to Alderman Massey.
Thank you. Let's get at the motion on the table. Is there a motion to consider an amendment to resolution number 18R03?
Well, Mayor, should I do the presentation first and then?
Be fine.
You want me to go ahead and do the presentation?
Why don't you go ahead and support your motion, and then we'll get it on the table.
Well, it's a fairly lengthy presentation. I mean, the staff went through, I think they're
Move to approve.
So.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Go ahead. You have the floor, Alderman Massey.
So this is a motion to amend resolution number 18R03 as amended at the last board meeting. Throughout the resolution, what I'll do is I'll walk through and then go through the changes. I'll explain why I think there's a need for the additional amendments to the moratorium, and then I'll actually walk through and explain the changes that were made. So throughout the resolution, I replaced the words apartment and apartment building development with the word multifamily, and I replaced smart code zoning districts with city. The resolutions proposed by the mayor and Alderman Gibson restricted the scope of the moratorium to only the smart code zoning districts, but my amendments will expand the moratorium to protect all of our neighborhoods. By using the word multifamily rather than apartment and apartment building development, I expand the moratorium to include potentially dense multifamily developments that could fall outside the narrow definition of apartment and apartment building development. It will also protect our family neighborhoods from the deceptive practice of representing a project as something other than apartments preliminarily and then changing it to apartments at a later date. I note that the neighbors near the Thornwood apartments were originally told that condos would be built, only to find out later that the developer is actually building apartments. In the final paragraph, I remove the mayor and Alderman Gibson's language that created special exceptions for multifamily development applications and smart growth districts that have already been approved at any stage of development process and by any department. Since the mayor's administration has not disclosed to me or the residents of Germantown which developments have been approved, we have no idea how many developments with multifamily were slated to be started over the next few years. I would like to publicly disclose that I received an email from a developer who does not want my amendment to pass because he said it will impact the redevelopment of the Careforce Center in the Western Gateway, which is yet another project that the mayor's administration knew would have dense multifamily housing, which was not disclosed to the public or other elected officials. There has been no transparency with regards to the number of dense multifamily developments that were planned for Germantown during the mayor's administration. Just like the negotiation for our heritage schools, the mayor holds all the cards. We have no idea.
Mr. Massey, you're out of order. You're speaking to your resolution on apartments or multifamily.
Well,
Please stick to the subject matter.
I think that's part of the subject matter, Mayor. I'll get around to it.
I'm the presiding chair. That is out of order.
Give me a little leeway here.
I'm giving you a little leeway to exclude that. Continue, please.
We have no idea what kind of deals the mayor and his administration have made on behalf of the city. The developer said he had been meeting with the mayor's administration for the past 3 years and spent several $100,000 on studies, consultants, and other various expenses related to the development. Yet only the mayor's administration was privileged to this information. Alderman Gibson, in her amendment, and this is my opinion, was not candid about the effect of her amendments at the last BMA meeting. While noting the removal of the word standalone expanded the scope of the moratorium, she failed to disclose that replacing multifamily with apartment and apartment building actually narrowed the scope of the resolution and opened the door for developers to receive approval for dense multifamily projects under any name other than apartments or apartment buildings. While narrowing the scope of the moratorium so it only applied to apartments and apartment buildings, when Alderman Gibson drafted the exceptions to the moratorium, she reverted back to the multifamily development language, which allow a broader array of dense multifamily developments in addition to apartments to actually be accepted from the moratorium. I thought the presentation of the amendment lacked transparency, to say the least, and I personally would like to know if there was an intent to deceive the public. It is my opinion that there should be an investigation in the process that was used to implement smart growth, the smart code, the amendments to smart code, and approval of the application for growth and development.
We're talking on a resolution you brought forward.
Mayor, this all goes toward the reason that we need to amend the resolution,
you have brought that point forward in other meetings in the past. If that's what you feel, then take your measures to someone like General Wyrick or the comptroller. I mean, if you think that there's been illegal process, bring that forward to another body. Continue with your remarks tonight on this particular resolution.
Mayor, you've brought in a number of comments that really should be responded to, but I'll do it at another time. The appropriate thing would be for the board to call for an investigation as a board. I shouldn't have to do this as an individual citizen, quite frankly. Our citizens deserve to know the truth about how the system was rigged through the guise of smart growth to benefit developers over our residents. I have requested information from the mayor's administration that to date has not been produced. Before the majority approved the apartments in Forest Hill Heights, Alderman Barzizza and I each asked the board to postpone the vote to give us more time to determine if the apartments were right for the city, but the majority refused and approved the projects. Prior to that, I called for a moratorium on all smart growth developments to give outside counsel time to review the process that was used to implement the projects, but the majority refused. And I'm closing, Mayor, so just give me a little more time. Only after the majority approved these dense developments and carved out exceptions for all the other developments they knew were in the pipeline did the mayor offer a cleverly drafted moratorium that will do little to protect the city, especially our schools, from becoming overcrowded. My amendments offer the board an opportunity to provide meaningful protections to Germantown families, and I urge you to vote in favor of my amendments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. The floor is open for discussion or dialogue. Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a number of comments that apply to the proposed resolution. I intended to discuss the last meeting and didn't get the opportunity based on my error, actually, in large part, by cutting off the question. But this is difficult. It's difficult for us as leaders, at least it is for me. I'm speaking for myself now, because I've taken very seriously the concerns of our residents when it comes to development issues my entire career here. This current debate about apartments is no exception. I've heard from many of you, including my neighbors. I appreciate your counsel, Brad. My church members, parents on my children's cross-country team and softball teams, and PTA moms. And I appreciate their feedback. I appreciate the opportunity that I have to explain my reasoning, because I have not done a good job of that thus far. Former Mayor Charles Savaggio once told me that you're never going to be able to convince people to agree with your decision, but a good leader can provide an explanation and some understanding of his reasoning, and that's what I'm attempting to do. I believe in the principles of smart growth development, establishing places where we stimulate quality development to create a variety of walkable, vibrant neighborhoods with a mix of land uses, with a mix of building types, and a range of housing options with neighborhood services for the residents is a worthy goal, in my opinion. I believe that strongly. Smart growth in Germantown was not created in a vacuum, and I think this is important. Several years ago, we had numerous public hearings with multiple opportunities for citizen input. People came and they gave their input. We had charrettes, design charrettes, where we met with stakeholders, community leaders, residents, and this ordinance was drafted. I wasn't a part of that then. I was not on the board then, and I was not working here then. But the city leaders decided that if we want to continue to enjoy the quality of life that we've come to expect in Germantown without a significant increase in our residential taxes, that we needed to expand our commercial property tax base as well as our sales tax base. Leaders wanted to do this without encroaching on our existing residential neighborhoods, so they decided to develop gateways and areas within the city in which we could permit higher density and mixed uses. The city center was a logical place for this, as well as our western gateway, which includes the area around Kirby and Poplar. Other areas such as Forest Hill Heights, the medical corridor, were envisioned as gateway areas where we might increase quality development without encroaching on our existing residential areas. I believe, contrary to what some of you have said tonight, and I understand your opinion, I respect it, but I believe that we have attempted to follow this smart growth plan to the best of our ability. We're following a resident, citizen-driven plan, and we're not being reactionary. That's good planning, folks. That is good government. Soliciting input from your residents, formulating a plan, and following the plan. Again, my opinion. An example of this is when the city initiated a small area plan and overlay district in the Forest Hill Heights area approximately 2 years ago. And this plan was an attempt, as I mentioned, to stimulate quality development, create diverse, walkable, vibrant neighborhoods. I could go on, but the plan was developed with extensive neighborhood feedback and multiple public meetings. I was at most of the meetings. I know Alderman Barzizza, several of you were at those meetings. We participated in those meetings with the residents. And this is where the plan was developed with the exact location, multifamily, I'm sorry, was shown in our plan exactly where the Viridian development is going to be and exactly where the Watermark development is going to be. I know that folks have concerns about apartments, but I'll give you some of the reasons, extend on some of the reasons that I voted for Forest Hill Heights. The last apartment complex, and this is just a few notes, the last apartment complex approved in Germantown was the Vineyards at the corner of Riverdale and Wolf River Boulevard. Over 20 years ago, this development is integrated very well with the surrounding single-family land uses. I think most people would agree to that. Single-family homes have appreciated in value, as has the complex. Contrary to what has been stated in some circles, Germantown has only granted final approval for 2 apartment developments, Thornwood and Watermark, in the past 20 years. I don't believe this is a significant burden on the city. The Thornwood site has only 1 and 2 bedroom units. I believe there will be very few, if any, school-age children residing in this development, and this has been confirmed by the developer in his pre-leasing. The number of units approved for Watermark was 310. Based on industry standards, we know the number of students projected to come as a result of the apartments is about 0.2 per unit, or 56 students, K through 12. You add in the Viridian development, which has not been approved by the Planning Commission yet, that's another 300 units, and we get approximately 100 students, is what we're looking at. In my opinion, this will not be a significant burden on our school system. I've spoken to Jason Manuel, other school board members about this with GMSD, and we've already accounted for that mixed-use development in the estimating of future student population. And I want to gloss over this. I want to speak pretty clearly because my kids belong to this very school system. If I felt there was a significant overcrowding possibility, I would not have voted for the projects to begin with, and I would have questioned the land use plan that we have for this area. Now, I believe we're reaching a saturation point, and I'll get to that, and I'm almost done, and I appreciate your patience with me. The small area plan that we have for at least the Forest Hill Heights area, in my opinion, is a good plan to help us achieve our goals that I've mentioned several times: mixed-use developments, quality developments, walkable, vibrant neighborhoods. I've been a land use planner for many years, and I've seen firsthand how this can work in other cities, both in there's examples such as Franklin, Tennessee, Carmel, Indiana, Alpharetta, Georgia, Hendricks, Arkansas. The list goes on, and those are fantastic developments, folks. I know you've visited them. Some of you have visited those, and that could be a part of Germantown, and that's my vision for Germantown. I believe it's a worthy goal. All the above being said, I believe we've reached a saturation point with the apartment developers, especially this early in the game. I think that the moratorium is a positive move. During this time, we can look at our smart growth districts and perhaps implement revisions to the ordinance, which mandate a mix of land uses, some type of percentage. Before any more standalone apartments get approved, we could possibly require that we have a certain percentage of mix of commercial or office. Or maybe we take out apartments altogether. That's what this moratorium is for, to look at that. Furthermore, the moratorium will allow us to absolutely make sure we have necessary services available to handle the future growth. So, slowing the rapid pace of this type of development, I believe, will be a positive move. I want to reiterate that we're following a process that entailed extensive citizen and neighborhood input, whether that be through the Smart Growth Zoning Code update or the small area plans. I'm not a fan of standalone apartments. I'm not going to say that I am. If I had my choice, I would have preferred to see small retail areas and office developments with integrated multifamily instead of the standalone apartment developments that we're seeing. However, in order to develop the type of retail and office uses and neighborhood services that we want, we have to have population and residents to support those. And now with these residents moving in, I believe we can expect to see the services that we want to be put in place. And it's then and only then we'll see true mixed use and smart growth achieved. I think Mayor, I'll pass with that and wait for, I know there's a second round of debate, but
sure.
I just wanted to make those statements, and thank you for listening to me and pontificate. And
thank you, Alderman. Anyone else like to discuss?
Yes, Mayor.
Alderman Barzizza.
Over the years, there's been one project after another that people in the community pushed back on, and it was pretty much localized. Initially, it was Thornwood, pretty much localized to Germantown Road, just down the street from us here. Then it was the Whole Foods grocery project. Again, pretty much localized to the people of Dogwood Road, and they pushed back very hard. The developer got indignant with one of the landowners and didn't really want to negotiate with him on much of anything, and then the landowner had to leave town because of illness for an extended period of time, and he comes back and his home is flooded with mud. Then sometime later, we had a big outcry from the people in the community. The first big outcry that this board has seen in the Germantown Road realignment project, and we know how that went down. But the people didn't want it, and so we didn't get it. Then there was a new elementary location. After some due diligence on the part of the school board, they arrived at a good decision as to where the new elementary school is going to be located, but it was incredibly painful for this body and to deal with where it was going to first requested to be. And it was, it was actually the only proposed location. So then we go forward, and the Trevere project, again, localized. The people of Nottoway opposed it. I tried to slow things down a little bit to try to get the developer and the housing, or excuse me, the homeowners association to negotiate a little bit more. And because all they wanted was something they could call a win. They got nothing. So then we go forward again. Now we're here, we're talking about Forest Hill Heights. And this has brought a lot of people out. I think what brought more people out than anything was this, along with the Owens Triangle. I think it's incredible that the people in the community came out in force last week, or 2 weeks ago. Over 250 people, I was guessing, after talking with some of the folks that were here. It was about that many. We got over almost 3,000 signatures asking not to have any more apartments. We have countless letters and emails and phone calls that were sent to all of us, members of the board, and I'm sure to the mayor. But the stakeholders are all of us. Every one of us are stakeholders. It's not like the Dogwood folks, that they were the stakeholders on the Germantown Road realignment project, or the Whole Foods. The city, the entire city, every voter, every citizen of Germantown is a stakeholder in this measure. And I think the moratorium is a well thought out idea. It needs to be tweaked. Alderman Massey has tweaked it. I think he has tweaked it to the point to where I think it's palatable for all of us here at the KISS. And I encourage you to vote for this amendment to the resolution because it will give us all time to do more study, to have an independent study of people like you sitting out here. Excuse me a second. I think a presidential candidate had to drink in the middle. What's his name? Cruz? But anyway, we are all the stakeholders here, and it's very important. And I'm not singling out any particular development. I'm not singling out. I just want us to drop back, and I don't know what position the mayor played in football, but if he were the quarterback, he would have, and he sees coverage out there. He's not going to throw the ball into the coverage. I'm asking the people up here sitting at this desk not to throw into the coverage. I'm asking you folks to adopt this motion that Mr. Massey has brought to us, and also have a real deep study of independent people, not members of the Planning Commission. People are not members of Design Review. People are not members of any commission, but the citizens themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion?
I do have a comment, Mayor.
Sure.
If everyone else is done, I like Forrest Owens. I actually like him quite a bit. He's one of the kindest guys that I've met in quite some time, quite frankly. He and I. Let me put my shield up. Wait a second. So, sometimes we disagree, and it's hard, but, when I hear Alderman Owens speaking, I hear him speaking as a land planner, and maybe it's just because I haven't been in politics long enough to speak differently than I know how to speak. The only way I know how to speak is a family man and a dad. And so when I'm saying these things and when I'm fighting against these apartments, I'm really fighting for my family. I've got an 18-month-old son at home. And when we moved to Germantown, we could have never envisioned so many apartments in such a short amount of time going up around us. And so it's easy, I think, for me to put myself in the shoes of all the other parents and families that are out here and all the parents that have kids in schools and empathize with that. I mean, I really do feel that pain that you feel and the concerns that you feel for your families. You couldn't have foreseen this either. And so I think my request would be that we take a step back and everyone consider whether you're representing the city as a corporation, whether you're representing developers, whether you're talking the way you talk as a business owner, and just step back and put yourselves in the shoes of mothers and fathers with children or their grandparents that just want to retire in their homes and live out their lives in the Germantown that we all knew and loved growing up. You know, we hear a lot about this was a citizen's plan. The smart growth was a citizen's plan, and everybody had an opportunity to see how many apartments were on there. But again, if you were like me during that time, before I was asked to run for alderman, I wasn't involved in city business. I didn't have the time or the inclination to monitor everything that my elected officials were doing. They weren't necessarily all that forthright in disclosing exactly what was going to occur in the future. And at the time, perhaps they just didn't know. Things might have just ballooned and overwhelmed us all. But this is the time we can take a step back and finally do what's right for the citizens of Germantown. It's time to put the citizens of Germantown first. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? Dialogue? Anyone else besides Alderman Owens? Alderman Owens. Well, Alderman Yonda?
No, go ahead.
Alderman Owens.
Okay, just, yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to address Alderman Massey's resolution, and since we're being nice, I appreciate him bringing the resolution forward because I did stumble a little bit last meeting and I didn't get a chance to say what I wanted to say and try and make some explanation. Regarding the existing developments, we've been advised from our attorney that to expand the moratorium to include the existing approved developments violates their vested rights and places the city at risk. These landowners have used these approvals to move forward with their design, with purchasing property, and I believe it's legally, ethically, and morally wrong to pull away these existing approvals or to delay them from the developer. I think it undercuts our development process. More importantly, the city and landowners have followed a process, including codes and ordinances, to receive the approvals that they've gotten. The process involves sound land use planning, good urban design, neighborhood participation, citizen input. We had vast amount of citizen input. It was not reactionary. I believe it was good government. But to speak to Alderman Massey's comments, of course, I've lived here, and I think you know this too, since 1974. I've got a family. I've got 2 girls. They're in the school system. I am vested. I'm as vested as I can possibly be in this community. Worked here. I go to church here, worship here, and I would never do something, in my opinion, that was contrary to the future of this city that I love. The only other comment I would make is that regarding multifamily, and this is just for me, if we expand the resolution to include multifamily, well, that knocks out multifamily. I agree with the apartment moratorium, but if we expand it to include multifamily, that knocks out condominiums, it knocks out brownstone dwellings, it knocks out duplexes. I mean, we've got a great, you wouldn't know they're duplexes, but they are attached. Duplexes right there on Germantown Road. I can't remember the name of that development, but
Laurel Oaks.
Thank you. But townhomes, and I hear from folks all the time in Germantown who are wanting to downsize from a single-family development, from their single-family home. They don't want to mow the yard anymore, and they would like to downsize into something. So I just don't think it would be good policy for us to expand it to multifamily. I believe that apartments does cover that, what we're trying to at least put the brakes on, in my opinion. The last thing I'll say is, I know we've heard from our Development Director Cameron Ross and our attorney about this, but maybe I'll ask a question of one of you 2 guys, whoever wants to approve it. The land that is zoned in Germantown for apartments, there is no vacant land left, as I understand it, to place apartments on. Like, besides, I mean, there's some RH district, retirement housing district, that is, we just approved, I think we all approved here recently over near Wolf River Boulevard. We changed the zoning from commercial to retirement for a senior complex. But the, for standard apartments, there's no land left that is existing that is zoned for apartments. Am I stating that correctly?
Outside of the smart code districts, no, there is not.
Outside of the smart growth district. So by having the smart growth districts, those are the only areas where we could have apartments unless the board chose to rezone a property. And then that would have to go through the Planning Commission, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would have to go 3 readings on approvals. And so I don't...
That is the process, yes,
I don't see the necessity. I am all for this moratorium that we are putting forward, or we just approved, but expanding it to include multifamily, expanding it outside of the smart growth zoning district, I don't see the purpose of that when we already don't have land available for apartments to be placed. And again, I don't feel it's necessary to expand it to multifamily, because I'm okay with townhomes and condominiums, because I've heard that from the residents. I'm sorry, I've spoken too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Yonda.
I was basically going to say the exact same thing. We've got from our city attorney that this basic resolution or amendment that's been brought forward is actually illegal. And the Tennessee Vested Property Act of 2014, is that correct, Mr. Harris? Is that the one we have in place is good?
Well,
and the one...
Well, without getting into specific properties, in part because you've heard from some of their representatives tonight, right. They have expressed their opinions as to their rights under the Tennessee Property Vesting Act. I've given the board our opinion with that regard, and while each property is in a different stage of development, ranging from a full development contract in the case of Thornwood down to approval of just an outline plan by the Planning Commission in case of the Arthur property, Carter development. The administration's intent from the beginning was to get a moratorium in place without disrupting parties who had come before the boards and commissions and may well have vested rights. That was the intent, so that we were dealing with the future, not those particular projects who obviously contend that they have rights to proceed. And for that reason, it was drafted in that way.
And do you believe that the moratorium that we have in place is sufficient for what we are planning to do?
Well, you know, moratoriums are temporary. There really are no permanent moratoriums. Ultimately, what the city will need to consider is changes to the zoning ordinance itself, and that becomes a part of the city's ordinances. A moratorium just gives you a window of time to do the analysis that's described for the reasons that were presented, and then put in place a more permanent solution.
Okay. And you helped make this original resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Gibson's the only one who has not had the floor yet. Would you like the floor?
I don't need it any longer. Of course, Alderman Owens answered and asked my question. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Massey, did you want the floor?
Yeah, I would. So Alderman Yonda just noted that the attorney drafted the original language, which was the resolution that was proposed by the mayor. My resolution actually takes back the language that the attorney drafted originally, which is the multifamily language. So my language incorporates the language that the city attorney incorporated, and I appreciate you raising that issue and bringing that back to my attention, because I forgot to note that earlier. As far as the reason for multifamily, I already noted once that Thornwood was built originally as condos, or they said it was going to be built as condos. You can have apartments that look a lot like condos, and what I am concerned about under the current administration is if we go down the road, we're going to continue to have these developments that are already built, and suddenly they say, well, instead of these being condos, they're going to be apartments. So I think that under this temporary moratorium, it is necessary for us to have the moratorium apply to all multifamily, not just apartments. And again, it's just a temporary moratorium. At some point in the future, we may take certain developments out. If it makes sense, if there's enough mixed use, it's on the edge of town or something like the Western Gateway plan is going to be, perhaps we take a look at it, and that we can always vote as a board to take some of those developments back out. But as it stands today, we don't know what other properties are coming online. We don't know what's out, what has been approved by our departments. And so we really don't know what the apartment count is going to be at the end of the day, what the multifamily count is going to be at the end of the day. We won't know that until some of these apartments like Thornwood are already on the ground, and then others are announced publicly. So I just don't think we can take the chance and do that. Alderman Owens, you mentioned one other point. You said you weren't crazy about the idea of the multifamily, and there was one other issue that you had, because you didn't want it to apply citywide. And then I'll address the issue with the vested rights of the property owners. Actually, I'll go ahead and do that first. So nothing has been built other than Thornwood. If we have to take Thornwood out of the moratorium, if we have to make an exception for Thornwood, I wouldn't be opposed to doing it because it's already built. I mean, it doesn't do us any good to say that there's a moratorium on Thornwood, and I haven't done that. I said new multifamily development. I don't consider Thornwood new development at this point. However, these apartments that have just gone through the process of having the outline plans approved, where there's no development agreement with the city, I think that the vested property rights are really minimal. And if you wanted to go, if there's a lawsuit that results from that, that's just something we'll have to deal with. You know, the idea that we're pulling the rug out from underneath the developers at this point just makes me harken back to when the city officials pulled the rug out from underneath the residents and, implemented some of these changes. So, I'm sorry. I'm going to represent the residents, and I'm going to fight for them over your interest at this point, because I personally think they've been betrayed. And I regret that it's going to inconvenience you and cause you some problems. But at this point, we need this time that the moratorium is going to allow to get the information that we need to determine if these projects are good for the city and if they were passed in a transparent way for our citizens. As far as it applying citywide, I think the point was that there is no parcel today that is zoned to allow for multifamily. That would just be a matter of rezoning those parcels to have them approved for apartments or multifamily. And so, to me, I think it has to apply citywide. Again, it's just temporary. But I do think rather than just having it apply to the smart growth districts, it needs to apply citywide. And I think the people on the triangle should know that if it doesn't apply citywide and they're taken out of the smart growth overlay, then they could potentially be subject to having apartments there again because it only applies to smart growth. So you got to watch the tricky language sometime. I'll close with this. I think that the original moratorium and the moratorium as it was amended really was a sham, more or less. You didn't get very much for what was proposed to you, and I'm sorry for that. I tried to fight it, and I'm fighting it here today. So I'm hoping that my colleagues, at least 3 of them up here on the board, will support my amendments, and we'll protect the whole city.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I have a question. It speaks to process. Alderman Massey has made some assertions that, unfortunately, I don't agree with. Just because you say it so does not make it so. So whether it's to Mr. Ross or Mr. Harris, what is the process for something to get from out of the gate, from application start time to end time? What is that process? If you could spell that out in as much detail as some of us might need.
Well, Mr. Ross does it every day. I think what, to focus on what we're talking about, perhaps you should consider, I'm just not loud, what you ought to, for simplicity, work through the plan development process, which is what all of these are.
Sure, and I'll also speak to a rezoning process because it is a similar process, but if let's take a single-family residential in our zoning district, a property owner with a larger than one lot wanted to rezone that. You know, standard practice is 2 acres or more, so that you are not using spot zoning in any way. The process would be an application is filed with the city in most, in my opinion, all cases. That's proceeded with meetings with staff to understand the application requirements, whether this is a good rezoning, a rezoning that makes sense for the city following our land use plan, other existing conditions, context, all the appropriate measures that are in place as city staff and economic and community development. We focus on both the community and the economics of requests that come into us. So with that, an application is filed, notice is given to the surrounding property owners within 500 feet as standard practice. 300 feet is required by the state. We focus on 500 feet to make sure that we get a little bit more exposure. Notice is also given to the neighborhood associations that are adjacent to these areas. And that process is started in terms of the notification. It will go to a Planning Commission subcommittee for review. The Planning Commission will walk through the complete application. There's a checklist of items that are required for it to be a complete application. I don't know those off the top of my head, but they are readily available through our application and application checklist on the city's website under the Planning Division. Moving forward from that, the Planning Commission subcommittee will decide whether it's ready to move forward to the full Planning Commission and make a recommendation to move it forward, or recommend that the particular applicant continue to work with surrounding property owners or continue to work with staff to make sure that it's a more robust and complete application that works with the context of which it's being designed. From there, it will go to the Planning Commission. It will be heard in a public hearing format after it's been advertised for 15 days in a publication of circulation, be it the Germantown News, the Memphis Daily News, the Commercial Appeal, and then moving forward from that, they will hear it. All voices will be heard as part of that process. If Planning Commission does decide that that is an appropriate rezoning of property, they will make a decision in the affirmative and refer it to this board, of which it will be advertised for a first reading as part of the agenda, and then on the second reading, it requires a 15-day notice period and publication in a newspaper of general circulation again, and then a public hearing as part of that second reading. And then the process closes with the third reading and, again, opportunity for public comment and discussion by this board. It's not a simple process. It's one that, on average, takes anywhere between 6 to 12 months, depending on the complexity of the application and the citizens that choose to participate in the process.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. The day after our last meeting, on January 9th, you and I had a conversation. I came into your office and we discussed the Cordova Triangle. The night before, I had asked staff to bring us a proposal that would remove that overlay, that would revert it back to the single underlay, which is single-family residential. No tricks. The conversation was that we have a process to get that in front of the Planning Commission. We've gone back and forth with the neighborhood associations. I know Germantown Heights and Neshoba North are the two most affected by that area. And the question would be, have you had conversations with those homeowners associations as well as the homeowner?
I've had multiple conversations with the property owner and a conversation with a representative from the Neshoba North Neighborhood Association.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other discussion? Alderman Yonda.
I want to say that I'm sorry that some of the aldermen did not participate in all the efforts, all the charrettes, all the public notices that we've had for all these meetings. They were not done in a vacuum. It's important to understand just because you didn't show up doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I'm sorry that you think that. I'm sorry that you've basically said an awful lot of untruths tonight. And, you know, it's slandering other aldermen and stuff to a certain extent, saying that Alderman Gibson, I know, I'm out of text, you're right. So I'm just saying the same things that he was saying, but objecting to his comments.
Well, let's keep focused on the discussion.
Well, anyway, this amendment, we've been notified that the one that we have is basically illegal. I think we need to go ahead and move forward and vote on this one way or the other. I think this is everything is going to be coming before us that has anything to do with this, including those that may have exception to what our moratorium is. So I think we'll be able to make the decision there to stop any apartments that are coming if we want to. I'm not for additional apartments, but I'm okay with the ones we have so far. And only one of them is being built right now. So I think the Watermark will be built. Will the Meridian be built? I don't know. But everything that we've got, all the facts are that we can absorb what's going on right now. I'm with Alderman Owens in that, hey, this is why we brought this moratorium. We've got other developers that want to come forward, and they're not, you know, everything we do is transparent. If you want to know what's going on in the city, you can just sign up for it. I know when they're having Mexican dominoes at the Joe Pick Center, everybody can know what's going on in the city. And I have a family here. I have 3 children. I have 5 grandchildren. They all live here too. Everything I do has to do for the whole community and my family. And I just think that to think that the other aldermen are otherwise is unfair and unjust. And I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
That's my last conversation.
Yes, Alderman Barzizza, would you like the floor? Everyone has gone through 2 times.
Well, Mayor, I'm not asking to speak. What I was going to say is I will gladly suspend the rules to let Alderman Yonda go on and explain everything that he disagrees with.
Well, he's yielded the floor. We're not debating each other. We're debating the topic with each other, not each other. So.
Well, it's confusing, though, when he makes statements and then
Alderman Massey, you make statements too. So, look, it's quid pro quo here. Alderman Barzizza, you have, if you'd like time.
Thank you, Mayor. I made a statement a little bit ago about a study committee made up of the citizens, not members of any of the commissions. And I make a formal motion at this time to adopt that and bring that to a vote.
So you move to amend the resolution?
Amend the resolution to include a board or a committee of citizens who are not members of any of the commissions, who are actually stakeholders, who are the entire citizenry of Germantown, to participate in this group is selected by this Board of Aldermen, the 5 of us, and we meet with these people. We'll listen to this.
Not explain your motion. Okay. Can you make your motion, please?
Okay. My motion is, would like to set up a commission made up of citizens of Germantown to study this during this 18-month period.
Thank you.
So that they would have a better say as to what's
happening.
Right.
Well, I think when they give their report, that'll be judged at that time.
Mayor.
Mayor, I'll be glad to incorporate that into my motion. I mean, I don't have a problem with making what I think is generally called a friendly amendment, if that'll save you some time.
Sure, well, he made a motion. Did you get that, clerk? You didn't write it out, so do you want to rephrase it? Would you like to make a motion to form an independent commission?
I'd like to make a motion that we form an independent group of folks, or a commission, however you want to look at it, selected by the Board of Aldermen during this 18-month moratorium period to study each and every individual location and discuss with the stakeholders on both sides, the people that are the developers as well as the people who are the neighbors surrounding that area.
Do you have enough sufficient for you? All right. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion and a second on a particular amendment to this primary motion. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
No.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
To be confused, and I do get confused a lot, so forgive me. You're saying that are we just voting on the commission, or that you specified, or are we voting on the
independent commission brought forward by Alderman Barzizza?
But no. This has nothing to do with Massey's.
It has nothing to do with Massey's.
Well, okay, so we're just asking for an additional commission of people to look at our moratorium, whichever one we decide to go with in the for the next 18 months.
Well, Mayor, that's not the way it was presented. It was presented as a motion to amend the resolution.
No, I did not say. Massey made a comment that he could, I could piggyback on his motion. I don't want to do that. This is a separate motion to have a separate entity, a group of individuals from the community, to be a study committee
I understand.
during this moratorium period.
Go ahead.
I understand, but what's before the board at this time is the original motion to approve Alderman Massey's resolution. If it's an attempt to amend that, it can be considered. But if it's a standalone motion, I don't think it belongs in the consideration of the main motion.
But I can make that motion after the vote of Massey's motion.
Well, that would be up to the board whether to proceed with that tonight or not. I'm just on a process basis, procedural basis, the motion that you have is to approve Alderman Massey's amended resolution. That's where we find ourselves.
Okay.
Or you can amend the motion. You can attach it to my. That's what he said. You just can't do it right now. It just would come afterwards.
I'll come back with a motion at a later date at the next BMA to. However this vote comes out tonight, no matter which way we go, I'll have that motion.
Thank you. So you're withdrawing your motion?
Yes.
Okay. And that's acceptable to the second as well. And that does conclude all of our turns. I would, as chair, I would ask one question before the vote is cast. I would ask our city attorney, does this proposed resolution put the people of Germantown in direct conflict with state law?
Well, point of order. I think that allowing the attorney to speak outside of debate is a little unfair to the alderman, Mayor. If you want to reopen the debate, then I think that's okay, but let's not allow the attorney to speak freely outside of debate. I just don't think that that's fair when you do it or when the attorney does it.
For clarity, point of order well taken. I'll rule that the attorney can speak on this. This is a direct question that affects the people of Germantown. So,
well, members of the board, my advice is to the board not to take risks that may result in litigation. The Tennessee Vested Property Act provides for vested rights, and without getting into any specific project tonight, as we have a number of representatives here, vested rights do occur at the point of preliminary plan approval. And the Tennessee legislature passed that statute, and the city of Germantown is bound by it. So if the city of Germantown took action that and it's very broad, if it impaired, delayed, obstructed projects that had preliminary plan approval, that would on its face violate the act.
Thank you,
So
attorney.
point of inquiry for the
Sure.
attorney then. So what do you estimate the value of these vested property rights are
A point of inquiry is to ask a question about procedure, not to question his comments. I asked him in essence for a quasi-legal opinion. So
well, let me ask the attorney
debate is closed.
It's not a debate. I am asking the attorney a question about his opinion, and I think it should be answered. I think we need to know, as a board, what the potential liability is for the board. Your point is that you're placing the city, that we're placing the city in danger by adopting this moratorium. We need to know what that liability is. So let the attorney answer.
Alderman Massey, the attorney cannot give you an answer to that because we can't project what liability is in something that doesn't exist. So the question has been called, it's been properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll.
On the original motion?
Correct.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
No.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
No.
Alderman Yonda?
No.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes. The motion fails. We move to the conclusion of this meeting. We are adjourned as a Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and now we are constituted as a beer board. We'll have our first case heard at this particular time. If the prosecutor could come forward. Thank you, folks. If y'all could proceed in orderly fashion, we're going to continue this meeting, or the beer board.
Mayor, could I ask you a question? At our work session, can we talk about Alderman Barzizza's program on Monday? Okay, thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are constituted as a beer board. Our first case in front of us is the suspension, revocation of beer license at Circle K, store number 3660, located at 1351 South Germantown Road. Prosecutor McDaniel.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Aldermen. I need to first determine whether or not there's a representative from the Circle K located at 1351 South Germantown Road. Anyone here representing the Circle K, 1351 South Germantown Road, specifically? See, Mrs. Kathy Moore Tabb. Kathy Moore Tabb. May it please the mayor and board, we would put forth proof by way of sworn testimony from representatives of the Shelby County Sheriff's Department that an undercover beer sting operation was conducted by the Sheriff's Department on or about the 15th of August 2017, and that the Sheriff's Department utilized a 19-year-old cooperating individual who was working with the Sheriff's Office, who entered into this location and did purchase a beer. The clerk did check the identification but went forward with the sale of the beer. I have Officer McKinney with the Sheriff's Department. If you can come forward, Officer Deputy McKinney.
I'm sorry, Attorney McGinn, 1 second, Mayor. Are we deliberating about agenda item 14A, which is the 1351 South Germantown Road?
That is correct.
And you say that they are not in attendance?
They are not present.
Is there any way that we might push that to the end, just in some chance that they might show up? Or, I mean, it's awfully late. I guess it doesn't matter. I mean,
That's completely, it's always been my experience. We go down the agenda
all right.
in order, but if y'all want to hear it, and however you want to hear it, it's fine
okay.
by the city.
We've got law enforcement here that are prepared
Please
to do
continue.
that. Yeah.
All right. Officer McKinney, come forward, please. Could Officer McKinney be sworn by the town clerk, please?
Officer McKinney, raise your right hand. Do you swear that what you say is the truth and happened the way that it's recorded in the document?
Yes, ma'am. Would you state your name for the board, please?
Deputy Richard McKinney.
Are you employed by the Shelby County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir, I am.
And were you so employed on or about August 15, 2017?
Yes, sir.
And as a member of the Sheriff's Department, did you participate in a buy-bust beer sting operation in Shelby County?
Yes, sir.
And did you actually go into various Shelby County businesses that had beer permits?
Yes, sir.
And utilizing a cooperating individual that was 19 years of age, did you make or attempt to make beer purchases at certain locations in the city of Germantown?
Yes, sir, we did.
Directing your attention to the location of 1351 South Germantown Road, specifically the Circle K store number 3660, did you utilize this confidential or cooperating individual?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a photograph of this individual with you?
Yes, sir.
Can you identify this photograph?
Actually, we have two here. Yes, sir. These are the operants that we use for the beer sting.
And do these particular cooperating individuals, do you check their driver's license before you utilize them?
Yes, sir, we do.
Does the driver's license reflect around their photo in bold red that they are under 21 until a certain date?
Yes, sir, it does.
And did you observe the purchase or the sale of this beer to the cooperating individual at this Circle K store on August 15, 2017?
No, sir, I didn't observe it. I processed the paperwork after the sale was made.
On this particular incident, I believe the let's see here. Did you have two other officers working with you?
Yes, sir.
And who were those officers?
Officer McMoore and Officer Thomas.
All right. And was the clerk issued a citation for the unlawful sale?
Yes, sir, he was.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Any questions for our prosecutor?
How many times is this
This particular location has had numerous previous violations, but this
time period?
Well, this particular ownership is new. This permit was only 2 months old. But prior to this permit being issued, at that location, there's been violations in 2002, 2004, 2006, and 2014, and in 2016.
Mr. McDaniel, since it's different ownership, we're talking about this owner. We're not.
Correct. And that's,
so, yeah, so in this particular case, the person who was cited, who actually made the sale, was he cited before with the former ownership?
no, this is under the new ownership.
Okay, no, but was this employee who made the sale, was he an employee of the previous ownership?
I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that the same district managers and local managers were the managers in 2016 when a prior violation took place. So the management was the same, but the ownership changed.
So a catch-22 here.
Well, understood.
Poor
For
management.
this particular,
Poor management, new owner.
For this particular ownership, this is the first violation. But
Well, I'd like to hear your recommendation if possible.
Well, hold on, we're jumping for some steps here. We need to get admission of guilt or not guilt.
I would ask
Can
for
I
a
ask
motion.
question? So the officer who observed this transaction is not here tonight, is that correct?
He is here.
He is here?
Yes, sir, he is.
Okay.
He's right.
Would you like to hear from him?
No, if this is his statement and he's here and he's willing to testify to that, that makes me feel more comfortable. If this were his statement and he was not here.
Officer Moore is present.
But that's fine. That's what I was wondering, if he was here. So if he's here, I'm okay with that.
Prosecutor McDaniel, the normal process is that we make a motion. Since there is no defendant here, I will make the motion of guilt. Is that correct?
Mr. McDaniel, since the officer is here, why don't we hear from the officer so that the record is clear?
All right. We'll need him sworn.
Cantrell Mackmore.
If you'll raise your right hand. Officer, do you swear that your testimony is truthful and in keeping with the evidence provided?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you state your name for the board, please?
Deputy Cantrell Mackmore.
And are you employed by the Shelby County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Were you so employed on or about August 15, 2017?
Yes, sir.
And did you participate in this beer sting operation being conducted by the Shelby County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir.
And specifically as it relates to this address at 1351 South Germantown Road, Circle K?
Yes, sir.
And did you witness the sale of this alcoholic beverage by the clerk at the Circle K to this 19-year-old cooperating individual?
Yes, sir.
And did you actually issue the misdemeanor citation to, or sign the misdemeanor citation that was issued to the clerk that made the sale?
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Questions for prosecution? Is there a motion to find Circle K, number 3660, located at 1351 South Germantown Road, guilty of a violation of the Germantown Beer Ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor?
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Prosecutor, do you have a recommendation?
I do have a recommendation, and it's based upon the fact that no one has appeared on behalf of Circle K. The city's recommendation would be a suspension of their permit, an indefinite suspension, until such time as they make application as to why they weren't here. They have the right to appeal this decision or ask for a rehearing, but it just causes the city concern when we issue notice and we provide an opportunity for them to come and be heard, and no one appears.
Do you know the name of the owner?
The individual that we sent the certified letter to was Miss Kathy Moore Tabb, and the notice itself see if I can find who signed for it.
So you do get a return receipt?
It was signed, we personally served a Shekinah, looks like Morgan, who is a managing agent for the Circle K. And that was done on December 5th. She actually signed for it December 5th.
Is there a motion to approve an indefinite suspension of the permit issued to Circle K, number 3660, located at 1351 South Germantown Road?
Move to approve. Second, but with the caveat that what happens after they come to you, and what's the process from there, Mr. McDaniel?
Well, they would have to petition for a rehearing. And if they do that timely, then that would stay whatever action the board takes tonight until such time as that rehearing takes place.
But,
go ahead, Alderman Owens.
sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
So the next.
It will require them to remove the product for sale during the period of time between they have 7 days from tonight to remove the product or to file a petition for rehearing.
And I would assume we'll notify them tomorrow.
Correct.
And at that point, could they still get on the agenda for the next Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting?
No reason that I'm aware of why they couldn't.
If it's timely.
Yeah, okay. All right. Fair enough.
Any other questions for the prosecutor? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
The motion carries. That brings us to item 14B, suspension, revocation of beer license, Germantown Shell, 7617 Poplar Avenue. Mr. Prosecutor.
May it please the board, I have spoken with a representative of the Shell at 7617 Poplar Avenue. Mr. Shaw, I believe, is present. He's approaching the podium. In speaking with him prior to this evening, he did indicate that he is willing to admit or enter a plea of guilty to the violation. We would put on sworn testimony of this matter by way of Shelby County Sheriff's Officer Roman, who's present immediately to my right, that on August 15, 2017, this beer sting operation was taking place, and that she, utilizing a 20-year-old cooperating individual, observed the sale of beer to that individual at this Shell location in violation of our city ordinance.
It's with an admission of guilt. Is there a motion to find Germantown Shell, located at 7617 Poplar Avenue, guilty of a violation of the Germantown beer ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor?
Move to approve.
Second. It's a motion and a second. Any questions of the prosecution? Vice Mayor?
I do have a question of the owner, Mr. Shaw. Is that acceptable?
Correct.
Mr. Shaw, Mr. Muhammad, the gentleman who received the citation, is he still in your employ?
Yes.
What steps have you taken to ensure that this never happens again?
I update my register, cash register, until he cannot scan. He have to put, she have to put the birthday, date of birth, otherwise he cannot proceed the transaction.
Is that what happened? And I'll speak to the officer that was there. Is that what had happened? Is that the employee failed to scan the ID?
Give me just a second. No, yes, ma'am. He did check the ID, but didn't scan it.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Prosecutor, do you have a recommendation?
I do. The city's recommendation would be a 7-day suspension or a $500 civil penalty in lieu thereof. This is the first violation of this particular business, and I believe the permit, I don't know if I can see when the permit was actually issued, how long he's had the permit, but this is his first violation before the board.
2014.
He's had his permit, he says, since 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Let's get the motion on the table. Is there a motion to issue a 7-day suspension or a $500 fine for this violation?
Point of order, Mayor. We haven't actually voted on the admission of guilt.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
That's all right.
apologize. Let's go ahead and do that then. My apologies. Clerk, if you can call the roll.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. If we can now get a motion, is there a motion for a 7-day, to follow the recommendation of our city prosecutor for a 7-day suspension or a $500 fine on the location of the Germantown Shell at 7617 Poplar Avenue?
So moved.
Is a motion?
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second by the Vice Mayor. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Yep, sorry.
Yes, Alderman Owens.
I'd just like to see, I understand that you talked to your employee and you were going to make them scan the ID. I really would encourage you to move forward with some type of formal training for all of your employees and make that a practice of your business.
Yeah, he did the training, He
Okay.
go to the Shelby County Sheriff was there, give training for that.
Okay, but he's not your only employee.
Do I?
He is not your only employee, is he?
No, the other one do there. Most of the time, I am myself there.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to item 14C.
Mr. Shaw, if you'll have a seat, I'll speak with you right after the hearing, please.
Item 14C, suspension, revocation of beer license, Shell Food Mart, 9095 Poplar Avenue. Mr. Prosecutor?
Yes, may it please the board, I think Mr. Mangiani is present, along with Mr. was it Shaw? Okay, Mr. Mangiani is present representing the Shell Food Smart 9095 Poplar Avenue. The city's proof would be that on this same date, August 15, 2017, the Shelby County Sheriff's Office conducting this undercover sting investigation of beer permit holders in Shelby County did utilize a 20-year-old cooperating individual working with Officer Roman, who was just standing here with me, who did observe the sale of an alcoholic beverage to this 20-year-old cooperating individual who did not check the cooperating individual's identification. I spoke with Mr. Mangiani before the proceedings tonight. He did indicate that he was going to enter a plea of guilty or an admission to this violation. Is that correct, Mr. Mangiani?
Yes. Let's go ahead and get that motion on the floor. Is there a motion to find Shell Food Mart, located at 9095 Poplar Avenue, guilty of a violation of the Germantown beer ordinance regarding selling beer to a minor?
So moved.
It's motion second. Any questions for our prosecutor or for the, go ahead, for the property owner?
Mr. Mangiani, did you know that there is a state law that when each and every purchase is made, no matter how old the person looks, the ID, that individual?
Yes, sir. In order to avoid this happening in future, I have installed 2 scanner IDs in my store recently, where each cashier has to scan the ID, which will not only identify the expiration date, but also validate all the 50 states of the ID. So now it's going to be very difficult for any cashier.
Well, it said in our book here tonight that the citation states that you did not check, or your employee did not check. And I was just reinforcing what state law is, and it doesn't matter if the person's 100 years old or 21 years old.
Mr. Barziza, I would point out in this particular incident, he actually made the sale. Okay. So just for the board's edification, it was Mr. Mangiani that did in fact make the sale.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for prosecutor or for the proprietor? Alderman Owens.
You guys said this in part the evening is going long. How many violations?
There's been one prior violation at this location in January of 2003. It's been 14 years since there's been a violation, and I will state that, you know, we do at least 2 a year.
Yeah.
So this location has passed a number of these sting operations over the past 14 years.
How long have you owned this particular store?
Almost 14, 15 years.
Wow. So you owned it when that citation was issued years ago? But that's a long time ago.
Yes, sir. The city would consider that remote.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for the prosecution? Please call the roll on the motion.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
The admission of guilt carries. Do you have a recommendation?
Yes,
for this
I'd
particular
recommend a
offense?
7-day suspension or a $500 civil penalty in lieu thereof.
Is there a motion to approve a 7-day suspension or a $500 penalty for the Shell Food Mart located at 9095 Poplar Avenue?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Only
Vice
discussion
Mayor.
would be simply to ask the same questions of you. You are the employee. You have gone through, I know that the scanners have been installed. Have you gone since to any more formal training to make certain that this doesn't happen?
Yes, I did. Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak to, and I believe the owner's here as well, that if other employees were asked to go to that training as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions, please? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries. That's all the business in front of the beer board. We are adjourned.